Evening, y'all. How's it going? Welcome to another Lockdown Live chat, another international laden lockdown chat. As we keep delving deeper into new talent that emerged during this global pandemic hoo-ha. Here to help me unpack this, as usual, my notorious co-host, the purveyor of all things Dracona Media, Mr. Alec Lyle. How's it going, man?
Oh, it's all good, man. Can't complain. Temperate temperatures in Joburg, so it's all good. Smiles all around.
Yep. As we start approaching spring, we're jumping a little bit over the equator, all over to what I believe was actually sunny this whole week in Britain. So today we're joined with muso, composer, producer, one-man band, eclectic virtuoso, man of many talents, so we're not going to lay them all out here, but we're talking industrial, electronic, cinematic noise. And what better guest than our international guest joining us all the way from UK, Mr. Duncan Evans. How's it going, man?
Hey, yeah, it's going very well, yes. Yeah, it has indeed been very nice over here in Leeds, UK. The sun has been out. The sun's still out, in fact. Yeah, as we move into autumn or fall, as some people call it. But yeah, we're not quite there. We're still in summer mode. We've got a newborn baby as well, so that's all good. So it's all happening here.
Yeah, well, I was actually going to mention that muzzle tough and all on the newborn. It's been a very big last 2 years for you. You've been pushing boundaries in all which genres, but today we're here to talk about Waxworm, and I guess delving into it as we do with all of our lockdown chats, we kind of kick off at the beginning of the lockdown. Obviously, this is a little bit of a cross-continental project, if you will, with yourself and Arther Brown, I believe, who's based in Australia. So I guess, yeah, what better way to start? How did this all come about? How did the idea of this wild project come into being? Please tell us.
Yeah, man. So basically, it all started about 13 years ago in 2008. So at the time, I was living in Leeds, as I do now, but in a different house. And Arther was actually living in Leeds as well. And we ended up living in a shared house, about 4 or 5 of us in this house. And so I basically met Arther through like a friend of a friend type of thing. And just somehow we ended up living in his house. Yeah, and I'd played a lot in rock bands and metal bands and things like that. Done a lot of guitar-based music, and I sang as well. But I'd been getting into more electronic music for the previous few years, but hadn't ever really created anything electronic. And it turned out Arther was producing music in his bedroom, essentially, just doing weird, horrible noise stuff and listening to lots of electronic stuff. And he was into his metal as well and his rock music and all sorts. So at some point, he actually reminded me of this recently. Apparently, the phrase I used was, I said, how do you feel about working together and creating some dance music that's impossible to dance to? Apparently that's what I said. So, which I don't remember, but yeah, so that's how it came about. And I guess I just really wanted to experiment and do something electronic, do something a bit noisy, do something with samples and like found sound, and just have fun and enjoy it. And Arther was down with that too. So yeah, and somehow, I mean, it's a whole long story, but basically it's taken 13 years to come out. And we didn't finish it back then in 2008. We kind of started it, and then a few things happened, and then Arther moved back to Australia, and then we basically shelved the whole thing. And then we eventually kind of reconnected and worked on it remotely. This is still way before the pandemic and lockdown and stuff. And then we kind of got to the stage where it was nearly finished. And then for various reasons, just other things going on in our lives, we kind of shelved it again. And then finally, when the first lockdown hit at the start of the coronavirus pandemic, I found myself with a load of extra time. I wasn't having to go into my day job and things like that. And I guess like a lot of people were doing it during this scary time where we all felt like the world was kind of just flipping on its head, and we were connecting with other people that we hadn't maybe spoken to for years. So I got in touch with Arther and just said, hey, how's it going? And how do you feel about maybe just adding the last few finishing touches to the Waxworm record and releasing it? We've got a bit of time. How about it? And he was cool with that. He was up for that. And yeah, Trepanation Recordings agreed to release it. So I've probably answered about 9 other questions in that. So I'll stop talking at this point, but there we go.
No, that's awesome. Something that we always very curious about is, how did you come up with the project's name, and what does it mean to you? What does Waxworm mean to you? Yeah,
so we had a few names that we were working with. I can't remember them now, but I think there were a few names that seemed quite cool, but then it turned out other bands already had them when we Googled them and things like that. Oh yeah, that's right. For a while, this was a bit of a joke. We called it the Lady Poison Dwarf Project. Lady Poison Dwarf being, I believe, the name of the drum machine from, and I've completely forgotten the band now. I can't remember. It's the name of the drum machine from like a goth band, basically. I'm trying to look that up in a minute. And we just took that and called it that. So I've still got like files on my computer that say like folders, Lady Poison Dwarf Project. But that was never the final name. And yeah, eventually we batted a few ideas around, and somehow we landed on Waxworm. And with this being years ago, I cannot remember the exact process, but I think we just, I've always quite liked the idea of taking 2 words and shoving them together. Like another of my projects, Moonlow, does the same thing. I don't know, I just kind of like that. And like black metal band Dark Throne, I've just always liked that thing of shoving 2 words together. Yeah, and we looked up what waxworms were, and so essentially they are the kind of maggot that becomes the wax moth. And I think we liked the idea of this, I don't know, this horrible wormy thing that then goes through a bit of a metamorphosis and becomes something not necessarily beautiful, but different. And I think on the CD there, which you might be able to see, I believe that the middle bit is like from a scan of a load of dead moths in a pile. So there you go. So it's all the cycle of life, you see, from waxworm to wax moth to a pile of dead moths. So yeah.
So
I don't know if that's
lovely. Okay, well, yeah, let's actually break down the project a little bit, because on your guys' socials, you kind of are described as dark electro-chaos, which I kind of figure is actually a very spot-on name. I mean, when I was even telling Alec how I kind of imagine you guys as like 9 Inch Nails, like versus a Depeche Mode thrown in with a War of the Worlds type aesthetic, and that like whatever the baby would be Waxworm. So I'm curious, your musical influences, who were the artists that inspired you? And I think more so over, were your musical interests similar to what Arthur's were lining up with this project?
Yeah, so I guess both of us have quite eclectic music tastes. So I'm really into anything good, is what I would say, and that might be dark folk, it might be singer-songwriter music, it might be blues, it might be jazz, it might be metal, it might be trance or techno, it just anything good. If I feel that it's got soul to it and it moves me emotionally, then I'm cool with it, really. So yeah, I think Arthur's quite similar, really. So I suppose to narrow it down to the influences for this project and for this record, I guess yeah, I think Nine Inch Nails were a big influence for both of us. And I think Lost Mode, someone who Arthur actually introduced me to. And then there's a few artists actually, just to answer the second part of your question, that Arthur knew about that I didn't. People like DJ Hidden, and Lost Mode I've mentioned, and probably loads more that I can't even think of. But I guess he was at the time, at least, a little bit more into underground, weird, noisy electronica. So I was into stuff like Nine Inch Nails, Ministry. I guess I'd come from rock and moved outwards from there. So Nine Inch Nails, Ministry, and then I guess there's maybe quite a lot of 70s bands, like the 70s electronica, like Kraftwerk and Tangerine Dream. Yeah, so probably those, but I think we also kind of wanted, so say with Mutus Liber, the first track on the album, I think we kind of wanted it to sound a bit like doom metal, but just electronic doom metal. So we were listening to stuff like Electric Wizards, you know, and Caius and all those sort of bands. So yeah, it was a big mix, and there were a lot of rock influences, but we really didn't. So we sometimes wanted to create a rock type of sound, but without using electric guitars. That was a big thing, where we wanted to create these big distorted walls of noise, but not using big power chord guitars, just recreating or doing a different version of that with synths, basically. Yeah, so I hope that sort of answers the question.
Definitely.
Cool. A lot of cool bands there.
Let's talk about the debut album, Mea Kulpa. Do you want to break down the theme and maybe the choice of the album name? Talk about how you guys came up with that.
Yeah, so Mea Culpa, wow, again, it's such a strange thing in a way, talking about this stuff, because different elements of this album came together at such different times. Like the album cover art was done recently. So Arthur did all the art for the album. He's a graphic designer as well. And you know, that this whole package was done like in the last kind of 6 months. But the name Mea Culpa, we came up with that. That was a few years ago. I think that was probably around early 2010s, like probably the second time we kind of reconvened and started working on this remotely, I think was when we came up with that. So yeah, it's kind of an admission of guilt, Mea Culpa, and I guess we just, I don't know, it's almost a way of saying, look, here it is, this is what it is, we did this, and it might sound horrible, and it's kind of supposed to sound horrible, but you know, here it is. This is us. This is what we've created. You know, and I suppose the Mea Culpa, the theme, slightly dark theme of guilt, I suppose, perhaps just resonated with some of the emotion throughout some of the tracks, and some of the dark themes generally, because it is, even though it's not completely bleak and it is meant to be kind of hopeful as well, it's a relatively dark sounding album and lyrically relatively dark as well. So yeah, I guess that just summed it up for us, really. And then we just put a K on there because we just thought it'd be cool. I'm just going to be absolutely honest about it. I don't think there's any deep and meaningful reason for that. We just thought, why not put a K on the Culpa? So
gotta be
awesome.
H-y. Gotta be H-y.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, actually, let's actually just dive a little bit more into the album. I mean, as you mentioned, this has been many years worth of processing and putting this all together, bringing it all together. So how long did the whole mixing process take once you guys were finally happy with the material? How long was that process, and how was it actually having to work cross-continental on the final bits? Was it just one guy working on it, feedback, yes, no, questions, and to us?
Yeah, it was, generally speaking, one of us would come up with an idea and then send that initial idea to the other, who would then kind of mangle it and do whatever. And then we'd maybe send it back again. Then the first person would then do some mangling to that. And then we'd chat about ideas for how it could go. And then, so the actual final mixing I did and the final mastering. But there were a lot of times where, let's say, I might have said to Arther, right, you know, for this track, look, it's in 13/8 time signature. Can you do a cool glitchy drum beat in 13/8? And let's see if we can just shove that on top of this, you know. So I use Logic as my digital audio workstation, and Arther doesn't use Logic, and I can't even remember what he actually uses now. But so we didn't actually. Maybe, yeah. But we didn't actually send the whole project files back and forth. It was so it might have been like he would come up with a weird, noisy, ambient kind of sequence. And then, so for example, Azoth, the last track, I can just remember that clearly. Arther came up with this kind of sequence that sort of went wow, 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 and did all this stuff like that, and was just an ambient, noisy kind of cool thing. He sent that to me, and then I put some bass under it and put a bit of a beat to it, and then structured it out a bit. And then we probably listened to it. I showed it to him, and then maybe he might have then done a few drum programming bits for it over what I'd then done with his idea, and then he'd send that back to me, and then I'd mix the whole lot and probably add a few other bits along the way. So it was like that, and it's been really enjoyable working in that way, I have to say, because there's been no real plan and no set way of working. And I don't know, it's great to be surprised. It's great to just throw an idea out there and then hear somebody completely mess with it, and it's nothing like what you originally imagined, but it's cool. Yeah, so I've really enjoyed that. And another example, so the Waif and Its Gun, that is a more ambient track in the middle of the record, and that was pretty much all Arther, actually. He did the whole of that track as an ambient piece, which it still is, and I added a little bit over the top. There's like a chiming sound over the top, which I added, and then other than that, I just EQ'd it and did the final mix, and that was it. But yeah, other tracks were like I'd initiated them, and then a couple of the very, very early ones, like Mutus Liber, we actually were sitting in a room together back in 2008, actually sitting in front of a synth and a computer and playing stuff in together. So yeah, in terms of amount of time, it's just been such an on and off process that I can't quite answer that question, because we mixed some of the tracks, we sort of half mixed as we went. I'd have tracks kind of 90% mixed maybe a week or two after we'd sort of finished them, and then we'd go into something new, and then maybe 2 years later we'd end up going back and then remixing the first one a bit. So it's been such a process of going back and forth. So I suppose what we did in 2020, going into 2021, was I just had to pull everything together that we had, which was like nearly final mixes, just tweak the mixes a bit, and then master the whole thing and just make sure that everything sat together. And that didn't take that long. That was probably like a few solid days work, and it was really nice just to have it, just to get it finished and to go there. It's not 50% done or 93% done. It's actually 100% done. Yeah.
Awesome. You mentioned that you use Logic. I was wondering if you have any go-to like VSTs or synths or plugins that you go to. I mean, you guys have such a layered sound, so I'm a little bit interested in the nitty-gritty of the production.
Yeah, so we used, generally speaking, it was the synths in Logic, the inbuilt synths in Logic. So you've got, let's just think. So I guess some of my go-to ones within that, in Logic X, is, I think it's called the analog synth or retro synth. I like the retro synth. You get some nice analog types of sounds from that. And then you've got the I think it's the ES1, the green one. If you use Logic, that's pretty cool. And then there's, I think it's just called the monophonic synth, is great for bass sounds. So we used a lot of those synths. And then I suppose another thing I quite like doing is using samples of real instruments. So we might have used the sampler in Logic and used, let's say, I don't know, a glockenspiel just off the top of my head, but then absolutely mangling that through like 19 distortion pedals and stuff. So it doesn't sound like a glockenspiel anymore. It sounds like a synth. So yeah, I quite like doing that. And we also, I mean, I've got also a little like Yamaha, really old school kind of 80s, really cheap synth keyboard thing. And it's, you just get some really nice sounds out of that are kind of cheap sounding, but also really cool, especially when you blend them in with other sounds. Yeah, and then of course we used quite a lot of samples of real like household objects and stuff like that. So to say at the start of Mutus Liber, we're messing around with a pestle and mortar, like using a pestle and mortar like a singing bowl. So you've got a scraping sound. And there was also a huge bag of pasta that we're just rustling into the microphone. It sounds a bit like burning or something. And that's what it is. And actually the drums in Mutus Liber are all, it's just a kick drum and a snare drum, but both of those are from the same sound, which was a cigarette lighter. So just one flick of a cigarette lighter, and it just EQ'd completely differently for the kick drum sound to the snare drum sound, and with different effects on. So we did a lot of that. Yeah, and on one song, there is actually a guitar on one song. Which track is it? I'm just looking here. I think off the top of my head that it is Raptus. Yes, I think it's Raptus. And we just got an electric guitar with a slide, but just mangled it through, again, about 100 different effects. So it was just like a noise. And then we played a drum, like a hand drum. I think it was a Doombeck hand drum that I borrowed off somebody, played a drum beat on that, looped the drum beat, but then what you hear is not the actual drum beat. You hear like the guitar, the weird noise guitar sound, gated, like triggered from the drum beat. So it goes, if that makes any sense.
Yes.
So yeah, so it was generally synth-wise, the inbuilt ones in Logic, but we just did a lot of mangling and a lot of mixing with samples of household objects and whatever else, basically.
Awesome.
The end result was awesome. Well, I guess as we kind of start to like wind down, tying this up like a sausage with mash and gravy.
Like it.
The question has to kind of be said. There's a nice response on Bandcamp, good reviews that have been said online. The question has to be asked. Any possibility of translating this project into a live band one day post-pandemic?
I mean, I would absolutely love to, I have to say. I really would. And we have chatted about it in a very, very vague sort of sense. So I don't know. Yeah, obviously with Arther being over in Australia, me being in the UK, it is difficult. And then you've got, I guess, the other difficulty, well, not necessarily difficulty, but challenge of how do you do a project like this live? Because it's a really big sound with a lot of different instruments and things, you know, instruments, if you want to call them that. But there's only two of us. And I think if we went and got a live band, it wouldn't sound right. But at the same time, you don't want to just press play. You know, you don't want to just take your laptop, press play and go, yeah, this is the live performance. It's just the record, but we, you know, through some bigger speakers. So it'd be a case of working it out. But yeah, I like the idea of doing some live vocals and maybe like having some of the sounds triggered from a laptop, but then playing some synths on top and doing some extended versions and getting really improvisational and just going really deep on the horrible noise jams, basically. And just, I don't know, just, yeah, doing some big ambient, completely improvised stuff that goes on for 10 minutes and then it kicks into one of the actual tracks. So yeah, I think we both really like the idea of that. But yeah, it's just the practicalities of like the amount of money that it costs to get from Australia to the UK or vice versa. You know, so I mean, I'm open to the idea. Let's just say that I'm open to the idea. If people have offers, you know, especially if people want to pay the price of 2 international plane tickets, and we can like meet in the middle. In fact, South Africa's probably sort of in the middle, actually. So there you go. You know, we'll play in South Africa if you guys want to pay for our plane tickets.
Awesome. Going back to the album, looking at you guys' Bandcamp, I see that you guys have like a lot of merch and physical CDs, and it's mostly like sold out. So I'm assuming you've had quite a good response to the Waxworm album. How have you enjoyed it?
Oh yeah, I mean the response has been great. I suppose the thing about this project is that I just didn't really have any expectation for it in a sense. You know, I've got other projects and I've been working in other bands and on other projects for years. So this was something that had kind of been left by the wayside. And I really wanted to get this music out there, and I'm really glad. But that was kind of the main thing. It's like, you know what, as long as it's out there and released, then we're going to be really happy. And then anything else is a bonus. And that's a great position to be in, because then you get one good review and it's like, wow, you know, it's made my day. And then you get another good review and another and another. And it's all just really nice. So, you know, I didn't have, and neither did Arther, you know, expectations to sell 1,000 records or whatever. Or to make any money off this or anything like that. So yeah, it's just been really nice that people have liked it. There's been loads of great reviews. Everyone seems to get it. Everyone's got their own ideas about it, but people seem to get it and to like it and to not only appreciate it, but to think that it doesn't sound exactly like anything else, which I guess is that's what we wanted. We didn't want it to just be a copy of anything. And I guess just going back to when you talked about influences, you know, we just didn't really want to be too influenced by any 1, 2, or 3 bands. We just wanted to do this new thing. Yeah. So and people seem to have latched onto that and seem to appreciate it. So yeah, it's been really nice. And yeah, we've sold some records and people are listening on Spotify and Bandcamp and all that. I mean, it's hard selling physical copies these days. But like I say, we came into this with no expectations. So the fact that, you know, hundreds of people, possibly more than 1,000, I don't know, but that, you know, have heard the album all the way through, you know, that's great. Yeah, and it's just, yeah, it's great, you know, doing interviews like this and just getting to talk about this. There was a long time when we didn't think this would see the light of day. So the fact that it's out there is really nice. And I think for Arther as well, I don't want to speak for him, but he hasn't really released that much. He's done a few things himself, just quite small scale releases that he's just put out himself on Bandcamp. So I think for him to see all these really good reviews coming in and to have physical CDs has been really cool. So that's quite nice for me as well, because I'm quite used to this. I've been in a lot of bands that have released a lot of records on vinyl, CD and whatever, and we've done tours and things like that, whereas Arther hasn't done so much of that. So it's quite nice to sort of see his reaction, like, oh my God, we've got a CD, oh my God, we're on Bandcamp, you know. And it's like, yeah, you know what, it is cool, isn't it, you know? So yeah, man.
No, that's awesome.
Oh, yeah, well, no, yeah, definitely. I mean, the way I look at it as a project of passion, I can tell you can know this. You have one immediate fan here in South Africa with me. I was hooked. So yeah, I guess as we tail end this awesome lockdown chat, are there any final plugs? You did mention you have a couple of other projects. I do believe there's a split album with Wilderness Hymnal coming out soon. So yeah, anything else you want to push?
Yeah, well, go on then. Let's push that. So
Cool.
there's an album, Duncan Evans and Wilderness Hymnal. It's a split record that also has a collaborative track on there. The album's called Until Liars Fear You. It's coming out on the 5th of November on Trepanation Recordings. Oh, shout out to Trepanation Recordings, by the way, and Dan Dolby, who also released the Waxworm record. Brilliant label, brilliant guy. So yeah, there's the singles coming out really soon. From the first single from Until Liars Fear You, which is the collaboration track called Three Tempers. So by the time this actually goes out, it might even already be out. It's coming out on the 11th of September. So yeah, check it out. That will be on Bandcamp via Trepanation Recordings, or me, Duncan Evans Music, or Wilderness Hymnal, who you should check out as well. It's a solo project of a guy called Javier Wallace, who does dark electronic music. And actually my tracks for this split are quite electronic this time round. You know, as a solo artist, I do, I guess, dark folk, post-punk sort of stuff. And so far, most of it's been pretty guitar based, but this new stuff is actually a bit more electronic. So if people like Waxworm, they might also like this new stuff. So yeah, Until Liars Fear You, Duncan Evans and Wilderness Hymnal. Yeah, I think that's about it as far as plugs go. There's no shows happening yet. Hopefully shows will happen. I think we're hopefully out of the woods with COVID over here in the UK, but it's still a bit like that, and shows are happening, but I don't feel quite ready to go to the sweaty shows with 500 people crammed into a small room yet. But anyway, watch this space, and you can follow Waxworm at Waxworm Bands on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and you can follow me at Duncan Evans Music on Instagram and Facebook, and at D Evans Music on Twitter. There you go. Plugs over.
Awesome.
Oh yeah. Well, I guess we can actually wrap it up at that. Again, thank you, Duncan, for taking some time out from busy family life and music life. It's really been an honor. Hopefully we can get you on in the near future and continue to deep dive all of this weird and wonderful stuff.
Oh, that'd be amazing. Yeah, if you want me to come on and chat about the split release after it's out, then just hit me up. But yeah, thanks so much to both of you. It's been amazing to chat, and keep up all the good work. You know, I've heard the interviews with Curtis, you know, our mutual friend Curtis. So yeah, I know you guys are doing some great stuff out there. So keep it up.
Yeah, man. And you just keep on rocking, and we will keep on listening. Thank you, Duncan. And
Thank you.
Alec, what do you say? Are we done for another week, man?
Hell yeah, that was a really good session. And yeah, wrap it up
All
nicely.
right.
Yep.
Thank you.
Enough said. On that note, we will end it at that. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. That does help us. And yeah, we will be back same time, same place on the interweb next week. And yeah, don't forget to keep that social distancing going. Hopefully this pandemic hoo-ha will be over and done with soon enough. Awesome, guys. Have a wicked week ahead. Laters.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Later.